You laugh because he's so nervous.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
What?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Tsundue.
Where did it go?
Thank you for the sound. And good evening, everyone. It's really nice to see all of you here at this intimate gathering of people and friends. And it's a great honor to be here for this event in particular because we have four unique voices from the Tibetan world among us tonight. And I think, if I'm not wrong, this is the first time that we've held, there's been a Tibetan reading in this venue. So it's, in some ways, in its own right, it is a historic moment. And I want to point out, yesterday, very interestingly, yesterday we had an event. We had a poetry event by the same four people in Queens, where there was a huge Tibetan exile community living near Jackson Heights in that area. And to our great surprise, it was a huge event. The number of people that showed up, it was unprecedented in the Tibetan community, because some of you who are familiar with the Tibetan community, you'll know that Tibetans are not necessarily very big on reading, and they're not necessarily, very much into attending poetry sessions, or there was a very different. People have a very different way of looking at poetry readings and storytelling events versus religious gatherings like Kala Chakra, initiations. So yesterday it was such a pleasant and wonderful surprise to see so many people, and what it reminded us is that there was this growing interest in secular poetry, the secular literature and the secular arts in the Tibetan community at this time. And quite interestingly, it's happening at the same time when there is a growing interest and involvement in the resistance, in the political resistance among the Tibetan people. As everybody knows, Tibet is passing through this very difficult time right now because of Chinese colonialism and the occupation, the ongoing occupation of Tibet, and the ongoing oppression of Tibet and the Tibetan people. And in spite of this, incredibly overwhelming kind of oppression, what you are seeing inside is this amazing resistance. And in so many ways, this is something that we have begun to witness in the last 3-4 years at an unprecedented level. The number of people who are involved in the resistance, the way it's spreading all over the Tibetan plateau, through all ages of people. And at the same time, this political awakening of the Tibetan people is running almost exactly parallel to this kind of artistic reawakening of the Tibetan people, especially the new generation of Tibetans. And I say reawakening because we have this really great traditional forms of art and literature that the world, in many parts of the world, many sections of the intellectual and literary world are quite familiar with. But one thing that many people are not familiar with is the modern and secular literature and arts of Tibet. And tonight we're really honored to have 4 of these Tibetan writers and poets from the new generation among us, who will read from their work, and especially when we speak of poetry, I think there was a good reason why it is happening at this time, and particularly many people talk about how the fact that there is this growing resistance in Tibet may be giving birth to this cultural renaissance and this growth of this artistic sort of explosion taking place in Tibet right now. Others think, in fact, it could be the other way around. The fact that there is a growth in literature and art and poetry may be allowing people to overcome their fear, so that you have this amazing growth of political resistance. And I think there's truth in both of these narratives. I think it goes both ways. Each is feeding the other. So tonight we have, among the 4 people who are here, it's a truly international representation of a reading, because we have all 3 boroughs, not all 3, we have 3 of the boroughs of New York represented among us, because we have a artist from Queens, a writer from Brooklyn, and a poet from Harlem. And also, our first reader will be the activist, the unstoppable activist from India, Tenzin Tsundue, who has been born and raised in India. And he's a very dear friend of mine, so when I introduce him, I have a tendency to talk for too long, so I'll just read the introduction in the interest of time. Tenzin Tsundue is a former Tibetan political prisoner who was arrested in Tibet by Chinese security forces for entering Tibet with no permission. He was beaten, interrogated, and jailed, and eventually thrown out of Tibet. Tsundue is one of the most well-known Tibetan faces fighting for freedom. Born and brought up in India in a Tibetan exile community, he is recognized among the Tibetan community, both in and outside of Tibet, as an important youth leader. I would say one of the most important leaders, actually, not just a youth leader. As a poet, writer, he had taken part in many literary conferences and festivals, including the Jaipur Literary Festival in 2010. He is the author of 4 books. Tsundue has been wearing a red band around his head for the past 10 years. 10 years, what? Which he says is the mark of his pledge that he will work for the freedom of his country and will never take it off until Tibet is free. And I would just like to quickly add that he really is the consummate writer and activist who has inspired a really whole new generation of Tibetans to not only to be involved in the political resistance and in the struggle, but actually a whole new generation of Tibetans to actually pick up the pen and start writing and pay attention to literature and art, which in so many ways he represents. So it's a great honor to have him here with us. So please welcome Tenzin Tsundue.
Dilek. I'm very happy to be here at Bowery today, and as a writer and also as a poet, having performed in so many different places, for me it's an honor to be standing on this stage. And I want to thank Bhakti and my friend Abhishek for firstly telling us about this space, and then actually getting this thing put together. I want to thank both of you. Yes, our 3 other poets who are joining and doing this performance here today. For me, seriously writing poetry and performing and then making a living out of poetry, writing poetry and selling, cheap India published books like this is my way of living poetry. More than poetry in written words, I think some of the things that I've been doing, like going to Tibet without anybody's permission, neither India's permission to go out of India and then go to Tibet, or China's permission to enter Tibet. I think these are really poetic moments in my life. Or, for example, when Chinese Prime Minister Zhu Rongji was giving a speech in the Oberoi Hotel Tower, which is a 30-floor building in Bombay. I climbed up this building from the outside using the scaffolding, reached very high, high up there. It was 14th floor, and hung a Free Tibet banner and shouted Free Tibet, and through these Free Tibet literature. And the police, security, people in the media, they scampered all around the ground looking for a copy of the Free Tibet literature I was throwing. I think these are more poetic moments. And with me, the activist is always inspired and supported by the poet. Yeah. Because the poet can come out with the impossible idea. The poet inspires the activist with the unimagined and here to unhappened, unimagined, and the impossible. And therefore, the activist is creative and is able to do things. And having come from a long distance, being a refugee child born on a roadside, our parents being road construction laborer, and born on a roadside from there, and then learning English in Tibetan school, whose teachers are trained by Indian teachers, and then learning English from there. Learning English in a Tibetan school where the medium was English, but never really speaking English for 12 years, and learning properly the spoken English only in college. And from there, I have come a long distance, and therefore, coming to this platform today, for me, it's a symbolic for me to read this poem called Horizon. And this is how I keep pushing the horizon and keep creating for myself a new horizon. And yes, perhaps out of all the traditions of poets who had come here and read, the illustrated poets who had earlier must have read from their drafts, I'm reading my poem from this cell phone. It's HTC Verizon. I myself don't really know how to operate this. My friend Steph, it's her thing. So I'm reading this from a cell phone. The problem is, the book from where I was supposed to read, it got sold out, yesterday, and I don't have a copy. And it's a very unique story here that the poet's book was sold out and doesn't have a copy, so he has to read from a cell phone. Horizon. From home you have reached the horizon here, from here to another, here you go. From there to the next to the next, horizon to horizon, every step is a horizon. Count the steps and keep the number, pick the white pebbles and funny strange leaves, mark the curves and cliffs around, for you may need to come home again. So this is something that I usually practice on my own, because being here in New York, and when everybody is kind of busy in their own thing, I usually have to find a way on my own. So I keep looking back, this tall building with this mark, that mark. Sometimes there are too many tall buildings and I'm kind of getting lost. So I, rather kind of note them down. This is not working. What was it? I got it, thanks. This is a poem that I wrote, kind of challenging the whole identity that had been kind of inherited. Instead, not just the whole inheritance of the Tibetan history, culture, Dalai Lama, all the things, we also inherited the kind of a refugee idea that we are born refugee and that we are refugee and we have to live like this. But somehow what had come to us was this identity, and this within that idea of the Tibetan refugee, I kind of resisted. I created a kind of a silent revolution saying that I refuse to be a painful, hurt and a suffering refugee. So I'm saying, when I was born, my mother said, "You are a refugee." Our tent on the roadside smoked in the snow. On your forehead, between your eyebrows, there is an R embossed, my teacher said. I scratched and scrubbed on my forehead. I found a brush of red paint. I am born refugee. I have 3 tongues. The one that sings is my mother tongue. The R on my forehead between my English and Hindi, the Tibetan tongue reads Rangzin. Freedom means Rangzin. So I've been kind of, thinking about our own identity and identity that had been passed on to us, identity that had been educated to us, and constantly defining ourselves. But being the poet and living that life, even within our own community, even among my own friends, sometimes people do look at you at being a little eccentric and little off, or like what do you call that thing. Yes, of course, there are these, but when you are so very at home in that kind of that thinking, that's all right. This is a kind of a life that I kind of started to find, and where I was kind of understanding myself and the things that I want to do, where I'm going to fit, what I'm going to do, and where my voice is, where my position is, where my role is going to be, how I'm going to be. Kind of in a very formative stage was when I was in Bombay. At the time I didn't have this red band. I was studying there, I was doing my master's degree. I wanted to learn, get trained in that city, but the problem was I didn't have that kind of money. And I didn't mind as long as I get that kind of a training. But there was a time when I wanted a place to stay and didn't have money. But I used to go to all these big book releases and and also these art openings of art exhibitions and things like that. And I met some very rich people who have huge interest in poetry and arts. And sometimes it happens that there's a big launch, and I'm also there with. You're getting it happened that I'm the only one who actually didn't have even the money to take the local train to go to my place in these suburban areas. And then I wrote this poem called Space Bar, very dangerously conspiring my mind that I'm going to find a place in your house, in the house of one of these big and rich people. So I wrote this poem as a kind of a proposal. And I was very serious in my attempt, to seriously find a place in one of the friends' big houses, where I've been on some kind of dinners and stuff. So I wrote this poem, and personally handwritten, and gave it to them as proposals to 20 rich people. So I'll read the poem first, the proposal. And this says, pull your ceiling halfway down and you can create a mezzanine for me. your walls open into cupboards. Is there an empty shelf for me? Let me grow in your garden with your roses and prickly pears. I'll sleep under your bed and watch TV in the mirror. Do you have an ear on your balcony? I am singing from your window. Open your door. Let me in. I am resting at your doorstep. Call me when you're awake. And later, some of these friends who are at the receiving end, I kind of confronted them and asked them, well, what did you think, my proposal? And they said, what? What proposal? I mean, usually I'm short, most of them are tall and big. What proposal? I said, their proposal I gave you in form of a poem. Oh, I thought it was just a poem. There is usually a kind of a fate most artists meet with, because usually there is a kind of this thing called art for art's sake. But I was really meaning, supported by some of the other parties who were with George Bush at the time. I was completely against that, and while in Dharamshala, I kind of created our own campaign against it, against George Bush's campaign, global war on terrorism. And in Dharamshala, we got together almost about 400 tourists who had come to Dharamshala and said, let us protest this war. I was feeling bad about this campaign, because there was this threat that anybody who did or who expressed their anger against a state, against a system, against a structure or a people or person or organization, anything, was now going to be targeted as a terrorist. And this was happening all around the world. And some of the countries, some of the big leaders who had things to grind in their own backyards, they were using that kind of campaign and branding these what is called troublemakers as terrorists. And it was completely unfair. And the Chinese government again was using that and said, oh, we also have some terrorists in Tibet, and the Dalai Lama is a terrorist. Not only being a Tibetan, but my concern was global. All around the world, when people who expressed their anger in form of violence were called terrorists. So I wrote this in my response to that, and I said, I am a terrorist. I am a terrorist, I like to kill. I have horns, 2 fangs, and a dragonfly tail. Chased away from home, hiding from fear, saving my life, doors slammed in my face, justice constantly denied, patience is tested on television, battered in front of the silent majority, pushed against the wall from that dead end. I have returned. I am the humiliation you gulped down with flattened nose. I am the shame you buried in darkness. I am a terrorist. Shoot me down. Cowardice and fear I left behind in the valley among the muley cats and lapping dogs. I am single. I have nothing to lose. I'm a bullet. I do not think. From the tin shell I leap for that thrilling 2-second life and die with the dead. I am the life you left behind. Responding that sometimes it happens that I'm able to respond, and it seemed to be that I have an agenda. But sometimes poetry just comes as a form of a response and needn't necessarily wait for the brightest sun or the coolest air or maybe a hand of your girlfriend to walk by. These are moments that just inspires you to write, and you have to. But sometimes there are moments where you have to write a poem as a form of a decorum. And that happened when, for the first time, when I went out of India to South Africa. We were invited as poets, or international poets, to South Africa, to Durban. And while we were there for 6 days, we were told in the beginning, very naively, very nicely told, while you're here, we would like you to write a poem and present it towards the end of your stay. That was all the instruction. We didn't actually know what was going to happen. And on the 4th day, we were told that the stage is set, there are going to be 500 people, and you will be presenting your new composition. As a poet, no, and I don't function like that. I cannot function like that at all. I have to, some of my poems take 6-7 years to come to my table and to be written. And in panic and in fear, and also having the obligation to write, now that you have been flown down from India to Durban and you have to present something, or else you may be actually thrown out for being an imposter and reading somebody else's poetry. So I kept on thinking, and I was inspired by this musician, somebody called Pedro. He is this South African musician who can make music out of anything. He would just sit at a table, either banging or tabbing or something. He is such a musical man. He's a man of music. And once he brought this short stump of a plastic pipe, just that, and was blowing from the top, and with the other finger at the bottom, he was making a flute out of that, and it was such inspiring. And with that on my mind and a little experience around Durban, I wrote this as my tribute to South Africa and to Durban. And this poem is called Pedro's Flute. Pedro, Pedro, what do you have in your flute? Is there a little boy who lost his mother and is running all around the town, bare feet, slapping the wet cobblestone? Pedro, Pedro, tell me what you have in your flute. Is that a soft moaning of a young girl, pregnant at 16, thrown out of her house, now living in public park behind the toilets? Wonder how you blow a stump of a plastic pipe and how it comes alive into a flute with no eye or ear or mouth, whistling, now crying, now singing, whistles that turn into small needle arrows, arrows that sting even the hearts of the owls who have hair in the ears. Pedro, Pedro, tell me what you have in your flute. Is that whistle in the hinges of the window the cry of the young girl? Or is that the breathing of the little boy who is now tired and sleeping at the police station? Pedro, Pedro, tell me, what do you have in your flute? I'm going to read one more, and then I would like to invite some of my other friends. This is a small poem that I wrote out of anxiety. And having read histories of many people in exile, and having seen the kind of freedom, the lavish freedom that the Tibetans in India live with, the poet is worried that we are too settled. We may just forget to return home. And as an activist who always plays the role of the watchman, telling fellow Tibetans. We shouldn't be like this. We should be doing this way. We shouldn't be. We should be doing that. And being that kind of a watchman, the anxiety, came out in the form of this poem called Exile House. In here, there is one Tibetan word used called changma. Now, in the Tibetan ways of living, we usually grow changmas on the fences. Changmas are the very vegetative, flexible, very, very flourishing kind of a plant on the fences. So this word changma is used here in this poem. It's a very short poem. It's called Exile House. Our tiled roof dripped, and the four walls threatened to fall apart. But we were to go home soon. We grew papayas in front of our house, chilies in our garden, and changmas for our fences. Then pumpkins rolled down the cowshed thatch, calves trotted out of the manger, grass on the roof, beans sprouted and climbed down the vines, money plants crept in through the window. Our house seems to have grown roots. The fences have grown into a jungle. Now, how can I tell my children where we came from? Somebody who has learned spoken English only after school, and somebody who has been inspired, the whole idea of poetry, the power of written words, from a graveyard in Dharamshala. Dharamshala is the place in northern part of Himachal, North India, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives in exile, and my friend Abhishek, we live there in Dharamshala. That is actually, it used to be the olden time British officers' summer camp, and it has now today become a big tourist destination with almost about 11,000 Tibetans and many Indians. Today is that, and when the Britishers were here, there was an earthquake in 1905, and there are so many graveyards on a huge hillside, and there you see all these gravestones. And from school, I often used to sneak out of the school boundary, come down to the this big church, and see these gravestones. And the poetry lessons that you used to get in school was so boring, but here was the one where I first got inspired by the power of written words. Although the words are in very in huge decorations, they were carved on slabs and stones, printed, and not only the art but just the power of the words so beautifully said to the dead ones. I thought there is something magic here. So I found the magic, the power of words from that cemetery. So I want to stop here, and I want to invite other friends to come and read.
Thank you so much, Tsundue. And I just want to reiterate that he just published his 4th book, and really he is the only Tibetan writer that we know who is actually making a living as a writer. And it's not because he makes a lot of money from his books. It's actually because he has simplified his life so much, and he's reduced the luxuries in his life that all of us are so used to. And I think he is somebody who really combines poetry, who not only writes poetry, who actually lives poetry in everyday life, and really a great inspiration to so many of us. So thank you once again. Our next reader is Tenzin Diki, who is a first-year fiction student at Columbia University. She moved to the US at age 14, started writing in college. Diki is on the editorial board of the Tibetan Political Review, a popular online journal of news and analysis related to Tibet. At Columbia, she is co-president of Our Word, an official student group of the writing program devoted to artists of color and fiction, editor of Apogee, an online journal started by Columbia students. She is published on Huffington Post, Tiger Burning Literary Journal, and Sahitya Akademi, the journal of the Indian Academy of Letters. So please welcome Tenzin Diki, our writer from Harlem.
Is this okay? Sound? Do that. Visceral. Oh, it's too high for me or it's too low? I like it's better. So my brother calls me a writer from Harlem because I go to school at Columbia and I spend most of my waking hours there. But actually, as he knows quite well, I live in Astoria with him. Maybe he's trying to send me a message. I may have to look at Craigslist. So, I would like to, I just first want to say how honored I am to read with Tenzin Tsundue. He's a huge source of inspiration, not just for me, but for other Tibetan writers. And yeah. And I am not just saying that. It was Tsundue's poem, When It Rains in Dharamsala. It goes, when it rains in Dharamsala, raindrops wear boxing gloves. And it goes on. And I'm really disappointed you didn't read it, but hopefully you will. It was that poem which inspired me to start writing. And I want to begin with a poem that is not finished. And Julie, you have class with me, so you've actually heard this before. It begins with letters appearing in the lake. A, ka, ma, akama. Ink in lake water overruns my eyes. I see the letter which does not grow in my land take root. I see the lie settle in. I see a scaffolding tall enough for a giraffe to hang itself. I see a slit of grass sharp enough. And this next one is, so I'm going to read 4 short works, and this second one is called the Chorten. And Chorten is, it's a big stupa, a reliquary around which people make kora, which is a, you circle around it. The Chorten squats in the mystery of the incoming circle. At 5 o'clock, when the pigeons flock, the kora swells supremely. A confusion of men and women asking only this: what shall we do with a love of diminishing returns? And and my next poem is called Everything is Relative. Sorry. In the first year, her cheeks are too vivid, but she denies her absence. She learns the sound for water, pani, swirls in her mouth words unfamiliar. She eats rice twice a day with her fingers. This diminishes its festivity. A small boy tells her the Himalayas are rising. The walk back will take longer, she thinks. She begins to cook with unfamiliar spices, cloves and coriander, fennel and mustard seed. Reluctantly acknowledges her expertise. She grows to interpret different touches, to name separate gods. In the final year, she accepts the possibility of betrayal. And this is Yutok Lane, and that's a small strip of road in Lhasa between the iconic buildings of the Potala Palace and the Chokang Temple. Yutok Lane. This is how it will be. We will take a walk on concrete, not blue tiles, and you will pretend to be disappointed. This will have the quality of a ritual. In the morning, the sun will fall from the sky. We will protect ourselves against its fire. It is not so unbearable, but we've learned to be wary of arrivals from the east. We are unbeautiful here. Our stay in the plains has rendered us so. But whispers now carry endearments, and we will not have it any other way. Outside the chapel, we will collect ourselves, then enter the bowels of this benign shell. Nothing in here threatens us. We will pull out our offerings crisp and new. This time, they will go where they are intended. The pilgrims are less urgent now, and slowly, the shadow of the deity gains its substance. Thank you.
Thank you, Diki. I'd like to invite our next reader, Sring Lama. Sring Lama's fiction, poetry, and plays have been published in the Malahad Review, Grain Magazine, Himal South Asian, the Brave New Playwrights Anthology, and Dolma Magazine. She's currently completing a Master's in Fine Arts at Columbia University, where she's a teaching fellow. Sring was born in Nepal and lived in Vancouver and Toronto before moving to Brooklyn. Sring, please.
Thank you. Thank you again to Abhishek and Disha. What's that? Party? Okay. Yeah. Thank you both of them for organizing this, and to Zibula and everybody too for inviting me here today. So I'm going to, I think I'll just read a few pages of my story. And this is a story that I wrote a few years ago, like 5 years ago, when I was doing my undergrad at the University of British Columbia in creative writing. And basically what prompted this story is going through my diaries back when I was 7 or 8 in Nepal. I used to speak, English is my fourth language, so I used to speak Nepali and Tibetan and Hindi, and so my English was pretty bad for a long time. And I looked through my old diaries and I realized that I was speaking this kind of pidgin English, and I actually thought it was kind of beautiful, the bad English. And I wanted to write a story with the bad English. So this is the story, just the first few pages of it. The Riot and a Girl. This morning, I was feeling so bored that I have shaved my leg with father's razor. Then reading some good books. But still, time has passed slow. I was wanting to go out of Kathmandu, Nepal, to an example, Thailand. But father told me it was not possible because of the office work. So I am in tension. Not only because I am asked to remain here, but also all of the guff of yesterday's dinner was true. We have strike here again in Kathmandu, just like my family said at dinner. My family is always diverting at dinner on all the gyan and guff. Yesterday night, all the talk was something like this. Will you provide me with money, father? My big bro. He is 18. I am the half of this. No, we are paying for your sister's tutoring this week, mother. Father, I too fairly have the needs for money. Bro. I'm not in the mood to reply you. My wallet is closed today, father. But it's not like this for little sis and her tuitions of D for dog and E for elephant. I teach her this myself if you pay, bro. Your little sister is study hard, so she's make use of tuitions, not like you, mother. Come on, mom. What do you need cash for? More high-tech shoes? No matter, father. I suspected you will ask me to provide you money soon. It is all what your mind can do. Plan about enjoyment. I enjoy my own way, yeah. No matter, there will be strikes for the coming weeks. No parties, no films, sorry, haha, etc., etc. I can reveal my bro has spent all the days watching films at the cinema with girlfriends. And now a mega project Hollywood film is playing during this strike time. I am in tension too, because some of the times he has liked for bringing me to the cinema too. Perhaps this mega film? And so much more bad luck for my tension. When I have wake up this morning, mother is folding my clothes in my room. She say me, go back to sleep, dear. I ask, are there autos on the road? No, she is replying. So the air is cleared. There is strike again, and no school. I went a little depressed. I have not seen my new boyfriend in school for 4 days because he is sick, and I have no money to take Tempu to see him in Baneshwar. I really like going in Tempu. They have 3 wheels, a cockpit for driver and friend, and 2 benches for 8 people. Anyways, no Tempus running in strike, plus we are secret romantic, as the parents are so strict. So I did not explain them my problem. Anyways, this is what I have asked father for us all to leave Kathmandu, Nepal. As I have said before, I made the suggestion, Bangkok, as I have never left this country. He says no. So he have asked my bro to walk me to Bhavana's house instead. Who is Bhavana? Bhavana and I are such good friends, although she cannot speak my language, which is Tibetan, or even English so good. Okay, because I only speak 65% of the English language, and very poor Tibetan. But we speak Nepali very good, which is her language. And anyway, we even understand things without any of the talk sometimes. Sometimes, when I have forget the wearing of my glass bangles for dancing, or I have thrown all the peanuts at the monkeys in the zoo, Bhavana will say, listen what I said, Laddu. Look what you did, just with her face expressions only. Bhavana thinks people generate too much talk anyway. In example, her father and her mother. We have been friends for 4 years. She is really daring. Okay, now let's talk about me. I am in class 4, and in addition, I have now an English tutor who is hippie in fashion and also manners. So, I am practice my English all these times. Furthermore, my aims in life is simple. To be enjoying myself in my own way, to take pleasure in my own technique. So far, so good. When I have arrived at Bhavana's house, she is feeling so bored too. But we have first-rate idea to sit on the roof outside her window and make plans for the day. The view is helping as we are seeing so much from up there. In front of us is a small temple in Bhavana's courtyard. We can to play hide and seek or marriage there. We are marrying Bhavana's little brother and being Brahmin priest in her father's loincloths. But how many times have we done this before? So many. Behind us, in Bhavana's house, we can dress in her sister's saris and bangles and anklets, and we can dance. But it is also an old idea for us. On our left is the Royal Nepal Zoo, where we go so much. To the right is my yellow cement house, which is different from Bhavana's house. Nothing special inside my house. Bhavana's house has clay floors and wood ladders like old style. And in her house, it is dark under ladders and in corners. So the talking, it goes like this. Ke garni, hasaina, ke garni, hasaina, ke garni. We have no decision. So we sleep on the roof for a while in the sunshine. The metal waves in roof feel so warm on my backside. I put my hands flat.
I close my eyes, but I see lines of the metal roof. Bhavana has turned around, so it is her nose goes inside the waves. I will be melted in the way of the shape when we wake up, she says. I will sleep on my back, so we will be like it on each side. What a sight it will be, I think. Will people recognize us? Will we be different? Now, time must pass. But suddenly, Bhavana's big sisters stand over us. She is so fat, she covers all the sun with her head. What are you two doing? We wait to change shapes. You are blocking the sun, Bhavana says. Her face is still in the roof. What nonsense! You are turning blacker than before. You are lucky I came out here to wake you. Bhavana is the darkest girl. My mother say it is because she never take umbrella in hot weather. So what? Who cares? We are busy now. Bhavana's reply so bold, no? So what? Who cares? We go back to sleep quickly in her sister's shadow.
So I'll stop there. Basically, the girls go into the zoo and they watch a magic show where an Indian man stabs a little boy in a burlap sack, and there's questions about whether it's real or not, and then there's a riot that takes place because this is a time of civil strife in Nepal. And then they check to see whether their bodies have changed from the roof because they forgot about that transformation they attempted, and they decide that they have changed. So that's it. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Tenzin Tsundue, who is a Tibetan contemporary artist whose artwork ranges from painting, sculpture, drawing, collage, digital to video installation, site-specific, and performance art. He has extensively exhibited his artworks throughout the United States in various museums and also in London, Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Israel, Madrid, and Mumbai. Tsundeu's artwork is held in museums and collections worldwide and is represented by Vosi and Vosi Gallery in London. Additionally, he's also a poet. His poetry books titled Are the Frozen Ink, Anatomy of Nights, Butterflies' Wings were published by Tibet Rights. He lives in New York. More specifically, he lives in Queens. Tsundue, please come up.
Hi. Who there? Okay. I'm not very good at explaining, so I'll just straight read. Okay. Days are the same, cyclic sun, moon, and the quarterly monsoon rain. I still am the same, with no name and country lost in vain. Refugee, refugee, that's how they spit on me. Now it has become an awful stain. In pity and sympathy we quietly remain, like a stray dog wagging his sour tail. Hopes drained, wrinkles framed, and my poor countrymen getting used to the musty pain. Oh, I must say, shame, shame. How far do we want to play this delusional game? We have screwed our forefathers' virtuous name, damned in between the great-built walls, with no new names to call, like an ostrich, a bird sighs of the truth. I enviously gaze at the swift doves sliding effortlessly overhead. On a stiff wooden floor, a hand-woven carpet lay soft to lure. I sat as quiet as cold, and as stiff as the benches beside the Fallon road. Sweat has taken all my strengths away, leaving my battered body to a meaningless decay. Roaches invade my kitchen, rats find its home in mine. Bedbugs bite me to wake, whispering, "You are not yet dead." I wrote something, it's a little long. Put down that butter tea and the glimmering rosary. For once will you please be a man willing to be free. The destitute of our patriotism before the wrath of red communism smears shame on our mother's bosom. Where is that fire, that naturalistic desire? Where is that anger, the patriotic thunder, prattling here and there on the stingy streets of Jackson Heights, slicing away your precious time into each other's nonsensical affairs? I don't give a shit if Shah Rukh Khan is the leading star. I don't give a shit if Hrithik has an extra finger. I don't give a shit if Nadal wins the French Open or not. I don't give a shit if Avatar is the biggest movie of all time. I don't give a shit if you have a dream to buy a house. I don't give a shit if you have a problem with your spouse. I don't give a shit if you have a dream to open a business. I really don't give a shit if you don't start acting like a true Tibetan. Who am I? I am that old man counting years in Trichy prison. I am that nun who was brutally tortured and raped for singing our anthem. I am that 10-year-old son who was forced to gun down his father. I am those thousands of monks and nuns who fearlessly chant mantras of Peransan. I am those thousands of monasteries which were wrecked to grounds. I am Amdo Genichume, who challenged Nagarjuna. I am Panchen Lama, the youngest political prisoner. I am Thupten Gutuk, who offered himself to fire. I am Chushikandos, who courageously peed on Mao. I am Tibet. I am a Tibetan. There are some who say that nothing can be done. There are those who say that China is just too strong. There are some who say that we will have to wait. There are those who say that we don't have a bait. Well, my mind spits on their faces. Words like fucking CC's echoes in my rib cages. Many of our youths too have lost their roots. They think that their ancestors were some hustlers or crooks. They decorate themselves in ignoramus self with tilted hats, loose pants, fractured speech with no substance, and with their pinched Buddha eyes soaked in drugs. They say to me, yo bro, have you got some change? Neither could they stand proudly, nor could they fall completely. I say to them, yo kure bro, I'm not your fucking bro. Remember, freedom comes at a price, as do the seeds of rice. Stop gambling with baited dice and plant the steps at a viable slice. Your answer.
Thank you very much, Desiree. So, on behalf of some of my friends in the audience, there has been an overwhelming request for when it rains in Dharamsala. So, Tundula, will you please do the honor? Who here has been to Dharamsala? And who has been to Dharamsala during the rainy season? So Tundu will try his best to make you see it in a different light.
And this is what happens when it rains in Dharamshala. Some people say that don't go to Dharamshala when it rains. It is too wet, lousy, and restricts you to your guest rooms. But being there and being a resident of Dharamshala is most beautiful during rainy season. It is during rainy season when the rain completely clears the sky and all the dust in the plains are cleared. When the dust has settled, when the rains have stopped, you get to see the whole Congo Valley in every minute detail from the small ridges that you see far in the horizon, the details of small houses, and Indian villagers still living using wood to cook, and you can see swifts of smoke, and you can see the details of the field and the rivulets that are now rich, flowing down towards the Pong Dam, and the Pong Dam spreads all across at the horizon, and beyond the Pong Dam you could even see the rivers flowing into the Pong Dam from the other side. The whole lake you could see in every minute detail, and that is only the half, because as you turn towards the up in the mountains where you see the details of the whole Dholadhar range. And that's what happens in Dharamshala when it rains. And this is what happens in the poem, what happens to us in the place where I live. This poem is called When It Rains in Dharamshala, and usually in Dharamshala it rains between starting from late June and throughout July, August, September. Even in the beginning of early October, the rains have not completely decided to go and still hanging on. When it rains in Dharamshala. When it rains in Dharamshala, raindrops wear boxing gloves. Thousands of them come crashing down and beat my room. Under its tin roof, my room cries from inside and wets my bed, my papers. Sometimes the clever rain comes from behind my room. The treacherous walls lift their heels and allow a small flood into my room. I sit on my eyelid nation bed and watch my country in flood. Notes on freedom, memoirs of my prison days, letters from college friends, crumbs of bread and Maggie noodles rise sprightly to the surface, like a sudden recovery of a forgotten memory. 3 months of torture. Monsoon in the needle-leaved pines. Himalaya, rinsed clean, glistens in the evening sun. Until the rain calms down and stops beating my room, I need to console my tin roof, who has been on duty from the British Raj. This room has sheltered many homeless people, now captured by mongooses and mice, lizards and spiders, and partly rendered by me. A rendered room for home is a humbling existence. My Kashmiri landlady, Kashmiri is now living in Himachal and unable to go back to Kashmir. My Kashmiri landlady at 80 cannot return home. We often compete for beauty, Kashmir or Tibet. Every evening I return to my rented room, but I'm not going to die this way. There has got to be some way out of here. I cannot cry. I have cried enough in prisons and in small moments of despair. There has got to be some way out of here. I cannot cry. My room is wet enough. Thank you. And I want to introduce and show you my latest and 4th book, Zengo. Usually people ask me, are you working on a book? Actually, I have never worked on a book. These are the compilations that I kind of put them together to make a living. In between, I write articles and essays which I get published in Indian newspapers and magazines. Some of the arguments that we have to make, some of the explanations we have to make, and it's a very, very complex issue. The whole Tibet-China issue is very, very complex, and actually the whole Chinese propaganda has much more thing to say, because they are so very insecure of their position, of the occupation of Tibet, and they keep churning out with new propaganda. And then the Western corporate media, corporate companies, and all of them have huge interest in the Chinese occupation of Tibet. And there are many journalists who say, oh, I don't know what the Chinese is saying something, the Tibetans will say something, and over there I can't go to Tibet, and so there are points where we have to make an argument, and these are the reasons where I sit at a table and write these articles, essays, which I get published in Indian newspapers and magazines, and after a period of time, I put them together in a book form, and I come out with a small kind of, you can say, pamphlet or a booklet or propaganda or whatever. This is how I come out with, and I make my living out of this. This is the fourth such publications, and this one has been recently come out of the press, what is called the Imperial Press in Dharamshala, our favorite and the best printing press in Dharamshala. And I say best because we produce good quality at the cheapest rate. And this book, which I'm going to sell here for $10, but the real cost is only 8 rupees, which you can't even see that or count that, calculate that in dollars. It comes to some few cents or something. So, but there is something called intellectual property, and being somebody who is from India, Tibetan educated in India by Indian teachers, I'm very proud that I have something to sell, and this is this is how I make my living. And yes, these things are for sale. But I also want to say that by with sense of pride that it's a good reading, and I'll show you as an example. I'll read a small poem here, a poem called "Remember How We Walked," and this poem is inspired and kind of a memory after 2008, when we led what is called the March to Tibet, a very ambitious attempt to walk across India-Tibet border in 2008 at the time of Beijing 2008 Olympics, and we were leading a group of 100 people to begin with, and later we had 400 people walking with us. And this was also the time when there was so much of protest. There was rocking all across the Tibetan plateau, and we were doing this march from India and walking all through so many different states, and we got on the final day when we got arrested, it was the 99th day, and here in the poem I'm saying, remember how we walked for 99 days. Remember how we walked. Remember how we walked for 99 days. 99 days of walking, 300 heads in a single line, one behind the other, bearing Gandhi and Dalai Lama photos. Talking, but not able to look into each other's eyes. One head following the other, telling each other stories, personal stories and secrets. Walking through grain fields, dark valleys, high mountains, over old bridges, through the busy streets of Moradabad, attempting to sing like Bob Marley, singing old Bollywood numbers, Suhana Safar Hai, clarifying that we are Tibetans, not Ching Chong, not related to Jackie Chan. 99 days of sleeping by the roadside, dreaming of home, thinking of Chinese bullets and all that noise in Tibet's prisons. 99 days of saying namaste to every Indian we pass by on the way, in the rains, thunder showers, or scorching heat in Rudrapur. Reading newspapers on the walk and not missing the fresh cow dung on the path. Mosquitoes and leeches in the jungles on the way to Titihad. The higher Kumaon mountains, sweating, sweat that wets your clothes to the skin, blisters that pop like chewing gum, leaving behind sorry red eyes in the feet,
shoes with worn out soles and still looking nice from the top. 99 days of celibacy and the guarantee of good behavior, monks and nuns and gay people getting arrested and spending days in jail with murderers and rapists, leaving behind parents, family and close Indian college friends, missing emailing and Yahoo chat, high five and photos on Facebook, marching to Tibet, inch by inch, every day, worrying what next the police will do, what will happen at the border, walking into uncertainty. 99 days of walking, wistfully, thinking, believing we are returning home in a dream and waking to a jolt when Indian police arrested us on the 99th day, packed in buses, trucks and jeeps and sent back from the doorstep of Tibet, back to Delhi. Remember how we walked for 99 days. Thank you. And we actually see in 4 different voices how so many different new voices are coming, how in the form of Tibetan English, a whole new history is being written, how these new voices are actually mapping the Tibetan exile world from Jackson Heights to Kathmandu to Dharamshala to Bombay and Harlem, New York. It's all these things are mapped in the form of the words, and I was kind of very interested to when I heard Riddle read those very angry, kind of frustrated voice. It actually exemplifies. I kind of felt the kind of very laid back, frustrated voice of people living in Jackson Heights. I think Jackson Heights is going to be the exile world of Tibetans living in New York, with all the what's called the Norling Tibetan kitchen and various other things, and things are actually getting mapped in literature. Thank you very much being here, and I want to thank once again Abhishek, my friend, who actually we lived together in India in Dharamshala, and 2 of us actually make the 50% of our house, Rangzin Ashram. There are 2 other members who are back in India, and Bhakti, who teaches here in New York, and she's actually being able to hold this thing together, space. And I want to thank Bauri hosting us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tudula. I think Leonard Cohen said, poetry is the evidence of life. If your life is burning well, poetry is just the ash. And I think that truly captures the spirit of the work that you do, working for Tibetan freedom every single day of your life. And your poetry, those books, you don't write those books in order to write them. They are just the ash because your life is burning so well. Thank you, Bhakti and Abhishek, for organizing this really special gathering. And thank you to the establishment, the staff of Broadway Poetry Club. It's such an honor to be here. And once again, I would like to thank all of you for being here tonight with us, and also thank all the poets and the writers, because poetry defies logic, poetry defies reason, or I should say, poetry defies the ordinary logic, the ordinary reason. And at times like these, when for our country and for our people, when things get very difficult, it is sometimes, for many of us, it's difficult to see hope. It's difficult to see optimism when you look at the mathematical reasoning of the situation. But only when you look at the higher logic, the higher reasoning of poetry, that do we see, a real and resilient and strong kind of hope that we too will achieve our freedom one day. So thank you so much for sharing your poetry with us and your hope. Thank you. And please, yeah, if you have a moment to stick around, I would highly encourage buying the books that Tsundue has brought with him. And they pretty much, like everything that he brought sold out last night, and they were all bought by Tibetans, and that's a feat. That's a really miraculous feat that only Tsundue can pull off. So please buy, what few copies are left behind of his books, and you'll truly cherish and enjoy them. And I also thank all the other poets and writers who are here. And actually, Jane, our unofficial photographer for the night, would like to request all four of you to come up here and stand here so that she could take a really historic shot
Under the banner.
of the reading
At the
tonight.
back.
So
Just
please,
four.
and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Zoom the type. Yes. Zooming.